Good evening. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners public hearing, June 16th. We were to start at 6 o'clock. However, we had some technical difficulties, so we'll be starting at 6:25. And I'll call the meeting to order. If the clerk will please call the roll, given that we have some hybrid attendance.
Good evening. Overman?
Here.
Cohen?
Here.
Hagan?
Here.
Kemp?
Here.
Myers?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
White?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Excellent. Okay. Welcome to the Board of County Commission Comprehensive Plan Amendment Public Hearing. And the Board of County Commissioners will consider the adoption of the amendments to the future land use map and the text of the comprehensive plan. I'll now request that the Planning Commission staff introduce the first item on this evening's agenda.
Thank you, Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. That first item is actually going to be presented by me, so I'm going to take a little walk over to the podium if you don't mind.
Not at all. Welcome to the boardroom. It's nice to see you back.
So will they bring up the presentation? Okay. So for the record again, Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. This is the presentation for the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment 21-21. Next slide, please. The subject site is located in the eastern portion of Hillsborough County. The site is located south of State Road 60 between Dover Road and Turkey Creek Road. The site is not located within the limits of a community plan. I should also mention that while this is a text amendment, the text applies to only one area of Hillsborough County. So in this presentation, you will see a few maps in the presentation to show where the text does apply, but ultimately the request today is only a text amendment, and the future land use map will not be changing with this request. Next slide, please. This is a privately initiated text amendment to the adopted language under the Energy Industrial Park section in the future land use element. The subject site is approximately 2,978 acres in size, and the request is to modify existing language in the Energy Industrial Park section of the future land use element regarding the number of alternative energy producing facilities required on site. The applicant had previously requested an additional change to the language regarding the buffering and screening, and that's under policy 59.11 in the future land use element, but they then withdrew the portion of the request in April, which I will get to a little bit later in my presentation. Next slide, please. This is showing an aerial of the subject site, which is shown in blue. We have State Road 60 to the north, Dover Road to the west, Turkey Creek Road to the east, and then to the south is Durant Road. You can see that there's a CSX railroad line that bifurcates the property, and then the red portion on this aerial map is a TICO easement that is not part of the Energy Industrial Park future land use area. Next slide, please. So the Energy Industrial Park future land use category and its associated objectives and policies were originally adopted specifically for vacant lands in eastern Hillsborough County in 2010 as part of a privately initiated text amendment that created the future land use category and then its associated policies in the future land use element. At the time of the text amendment, there was also a map amendment to the site to change the future land use category to Energy Industrial Park. The policies were written based on the topography of the site at the time and the energy producing technology at the time. And there was also a large public outreach effort in 2010. Next slide, please. The next few slides show a few photos of the site itself. So the first one we have here, the text is over it, so I cannot even read it. I think this is Dover Road looking north, so the site is to the east. Next slide, please. And then this is the opposite direction from Dover Road facing the site, so southeast. Thank you, whoever did that. Next slide, please. This is a picture just showing kind of the typical vegetation and berming that's occurring on the surrounding on the property on the Dover Road side, which is the western side. Next slide, please. And this is a view from Turkey Creek Road, so the eastern portion of the site, looking northbound looking west. Next slide, please. At the Planning Commission public hearing in April, the proposed changes to the Energy Industrial Park section included a modification of the berming and screening language, as I mentioned, under Policy 59.11, item number 2. Subsequent to the Planning Commission meeting that occurred on April 11th, the applicant then revised the request to completely remove this change. So to be clear, the applicant has removed any proposed changes to the language under Policy 59.11 with no changes proposed for the buffering and screening language. And this does bring us to the sole proposed revision. Currently, the adopted language reads that there needs to be 2 renewable energy producing facilities with the required production outputs. And the proposed change would add an option that there could be 1 renewable energy producing facility, but with double that output. And some examples of renewable energy include biomass to energy, wind, solar, aquaculture, and then municipal solid waste to energy. Next slide, please. The request has been found consistent with numerous comprehensive plan objectives and policies, including the neighborhood protection policies found in the future land use element, specifically policy 16.1, which says that all neighborhoods should be protected by restricting incompatible land uses through buffering and screening, as well as policy 16.2, which emphasizes the use of professional site planning, buffering, and screening techniques to help with gradual transitions of intensities between different land uses. The request has also been found consistent with the 2 objectives and various policies of the Energy Industrial Park section in the future land use element, such as policy 59.1, which states that the Energy Industrial Park area must consist of a mix of renewable alternative energy production and renewable alternative energy, resource recovery, and research type facilities with educational and employment uses to create a sustainable, viable economic base. And the proposed text amendment was also found consistent with various environmental policies found in the Environment and Sustainability section of the Comprehensive Plan, namely Policy 1.1.4, which promotes energy efficient and sustainable development practices, Objective 1.2, which supports the development and use of alternative energy and fuel. And the request was also consistent with Objective 3.7, which promotes projects and innovations that integrate the pillars of sustainability, which are natural resource protection, community health and well-being, and economic prosperity. Next slide, please. The Planning Commission recommended that the proposed text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm here for any questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person to be recognized is the applicant. Is the applicant available to do a presentation?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tyler Hudson. My address is 400 North Ashley Drive. Melissa did, I think, an excellent job summarizing the robust discussion that I think we had at the April transmittal hearing for this item. And so I do not have a formal presentation to make, but I am happy to answer any questions that you may have that have arisen since the last presentation. And we'll stand by for those.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, and we do set aside time for speakers. However, I don't have anyone other than Mr. Hudson signed up to speak on this item. So not hearing or seeing any hands raised for public comment, and assuming there's no need for a rebuttal, we'll open it up for board discussion and consideration of the item.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner White, a second by Commissioner Smith. Clerk, if you'll do a roll call vote, please.
Overman,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will move on to item HCCPA 2202. Is Mr. Hudson going to actually introduce this item?
Yes, I am. If HTV could start my PowerPoint.
Again, Mark Hudson, Planning Commission staff. We're bringing this item back for your consideration after your transmittal hearing on this topic on April 21st. This is HC CPA 22-02, and it relates to the update of your intergovernmental coordination section in your comprehensive plan. If I could have the next slide. Just a little bit of background and to refresh your memory. Again, this is the process we went through over the last couple of months of updating your intergovernmental coordination section. It is a publicly initiated text amendment. It was last done in 2008, so as you can imagine, there was a lot of edits that needed to be made. The edits were made in a strike-through underlined format to show you deleted text and new text. Some comments on April 21st, which we have addressed, and they're highlighted in blue. And I will be going over those as part of this presentation. Next slide. One of the issues that were raised on April 21st was the issue of how the Heartline interacts with this process and these intergovernmental coordination activities. So we added citations, and we reviewed all the policies, added citations of appropriate locations where we felt Heartline was a key partner agency in evaluating the particular topic. We added that citation along 6 policies. They related to the coordination of impacts of development, the provision of infrastructure, land use and transportation planning, delivery of social services, and promoting sustainable communities. As you can see, it's a wide variety of topics, and obviously HART is a very important partner and will be participating in all those aspects of your comprehensive plan. You can have the next slide. Probably the most discussion back on April 21st dealt with the issue of municipal annexations and how they impacted Hillsborough County facilities and the coordination with each of those cities. We worked closely with your staff, and we developed 2 policies to add on that we felt will further facilitate this discussion between each of the cities and Hillsborough County. Primarily what we felt was the primary issue that needed to be addressed was impacts to our transportation network. However, we also addressed other provisions as well. I'll go ahead and read these 2 policies just to go over them slowly so you can see how we address these in the language that we worked out with your staff. One is new policy 1.2.8. And it states when lands are annexed into a municipality that are served by adjacent roadways under the jurisdiction of Hillsborough County, the municipality should contribute funds proportionate to their impacts for needed improvements and maintenance of those roadways. Now that covered the transportation issues. However, there's a second part to this policy that deals with any other public facility issues that may arise due to these annexations. And it reads, also, if non-transportation public facilities provided by Hillsborough County are identified as being impacted by new developments within these annexation areas, annexing municipalities should participate in implementing any improvements needed to ensure the adopted levels of service are maintained to the standards of Hillsborough County. So that is a 2-part policy. The first part relates to transportation, and the second part relates to all other public facilities provided by Hillsborough County. If I could have the next slide. And this is the second policy that relates specifically again to transportation, but really how roadways are handled and what point they should transfer over to the municipality. So it reads, as a result of annexations, when a municipal lands along both sides of a roadway segment under the jurisdiction of Hillsborough County comprise half or more of the total linear feet, the county will evaluate such roadway segment functions and, if appropriate, formally request the municipality take over ownership and maintenance of these affected roadway segment or contribute funds proportionate to its impacts for needed improvements and maintenance of such roadway segment. This has happened a little bit ad hoc up to this point. I know some examples in Plant City dealing with Charlie Taylor Road and Johnson Road, where there was a transfer of the roadway from the county to the municipality. However, this makes it a little bit more formal process of when that should be triggered. If I could have the next slide. Just to remind you, we did do some extensive outreach for this, and including and culminating with a virtual public outreach meeting on February 22nd. The Planning Commission Board did review this on April 11th and did find it consistent with your comprehensive plan. We feel we've addressed the issues that you brought to our attention on April 21st. And based on your direction, we did transmit this to the Department of Economic Opportunity for their review. They had no objections or comments, and we are here today to consider the adoption of this element. Next slide. So with that, Planning Commission staff recommends the County Commission adopt an ordinance approving HCCPA 22-02 to update the intergovernmental coordination section of the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. I stand for any questions, and also I do have and am prepared to repeat my presentation from April 11th if there is a desire of the board. And with that, I can answer any questions.
I'm not seeing everybody jumping up and
Move
down
approval.
and asking for that, so
Second.
thank you. It is a public hearing, and I don't have anyone signed up to speak to this item. And seeing no public speakers, the discussion was very, very short, apparently. And with that, we have a motion by Commissioner Cohen and a second by Commissioner White. Okay. With that, we'll take a vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, so, and we need to do the vote on the ordinance for the large scale on this particular, so we want to vote to consider an ordinance for the adoption of CPA 2121 and CPA 2202.
So moved.
Excellent. And please take a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent. So we've now approached the small scale plan amendment adoption public hearing. I'll open that hearing for item B1, HCCPA 2203, future land use map change for West Hillsborough Avenue and Racetrack Road. Planning Commission?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Jillian Massey will be presenting that item.
Excellent.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. This is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. This evening, I'll be presenting HCCPA 22-03, which is West Hillsborough Avenue and Racetrack Road. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. This plan amendment is part of the January 2022 cycle. This was originally scheduled for public hearing back in April, but at the meeting, the applicant had requested to continue to the next public hearing. The site is located at the very western side of the unincorporated Hillsborough County, located on West Hillsborough Avenue and east of Racetrack Road. This is a privately initiated map amendment that involves two parcels totaling approximately 7.99 acres. It's located in the urban service area and within the limits of the Northwest area and Town and Country community plans. The subject site is also located entirely in the coastal high hazard area. And this is an aerial photo of the site. The parcel to the west, which this site involves two parcels, is classified as heavy industrial with a storage building on it, and the parcel to the east is classified as vacant commercial land. The subject site is mainly surrounded by other light commercial and light industrial uses to the north, east, and west on that side of West Hillsborough Avenue, as well as some agricultural, mobile home parks, and other residential developments on the opposite side of West Hillsborough Avenue. This is the adopted future land use map for the area. You can see the subject site outlined in black. As you can see here, there's two land use designations for the site: regional mixed use 35 and light industrial. Surrounding the site is mainly light industrial on this side of the West Hillsborough Avenue. Across West Hillsborough Avenue to the south is mainly classified as office commercial 20. And further around this corridor is residential 4. The applicant is proposing to change the subject site to residential 35. This is just a screenshot of our planning information map app, which is to show you that both parcels are located entirely in the coastal high hazard area. This is a photo of the subject site facing northeast on West Hillsborough Avenue, where you can see the arrow pointing to the wooded area behind the commercial buildings to the right. This is just a closer view of the same direction facing northeast on West Hillsborough Avenue. This is the subject site. It's located to the east of the billboard in the photograph. This is looking across the street on West Hillsborough Avenue, and this is facing southwest. You can see here in this photo across the street, there are some office buildings, and further down the road is some agricultural uses. This table shows the potential impacts of the change. The proposed amendment would allow for an increase in residential density and a decrease in commercial intensity. So as you can see here, currently the maximum number of residential units is 120, and the proposed land use change would allow for up to 279 units. And the non-residential development potential would go from approximately 450,000 square feet to about 350,000 square feet, but would be capped at 175,000 due to the rules of residential 35 category. Planning Commission has reviewed this request and has found it to be inconsistent with several goals, objectives, and policies in the comprehensive plan. Some areas where inconsistencies were found were the policies relating to the direction of growth to the urban service area and minimum density requirements. A change to the residential 35 would allow for an increase in possible residential density. However, due to the property's location in the coastal high hazard area, minimum density requirements do not need to be met, which is inconsistent with the intent of growth in the urban service area. Policy 10.6 states that in order to further direct residential population growth from vulnerable coastal areas of the county, all density bonuses outlined in the future land use element shall not be applicable to properties in the coastal high hazard area. Next is Objective 16 and its associated policies relating to neighborhood protection and Goal 12 of the community design component as it relates to compatibility with the surrounding land uses. The intent of residential 35 is not compatible with the existing development pattern in the general area. The area immediately surrounding the site on the north, east, and west is designated as light industrial and contains light commercial and light industrial uses. To the south, the future land use category is office commercial 12 and mainly contains agricultural, office uses, and residential developments that meet the intent of the category they're located in. As it relates to economic development, policy 26.5 discusses how non-residential land uses, how non-industrial land uses shall be restricted or prohibited in the industrial land use categories, which this area is designated that way. And economic development areas will be preserved for employment centers. Other relevant policies that were considered and evaluated during the review were within the coastal management element, which discussed the requirement for a site plan review process for new development, where the applicant shall provide adequate data to assess the impacts of the proposed development upon existing infrastructure within the coastal high hazard area. With regards to the livable communities element, the site's located within the town and country and Northwest area community plans. The Northwest area community plan seeks mixed use neighborhoods that are pedestrian friendly and offer a variety of housing types while maintaining property values and the structure of existing neighborhoods. Furthermore, the town and country community plan designates specific areas that may be developed as town centers with a mix of uses. The site is not designated as one of them. This proposal was sent out for agency review, and we have provided the informational comments in your packet. Comments to note are from the Office of Emergency Management, who wrote that the negative impacts of the change would surpass any positive outcome, and also from the Hazard Mitigation Division, who found that the change would be a high risk in a high impact area and that they had serious concerns. The Planning Commission recommended that the proposed map amendment be found inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated Hillsborough County. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Is the applicant present? We have 3 minutes set aside for the applicant.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Todd Pressman. Cami Corbett is part of our team and is registered, and I'd like to ask if I may be able to use her 3 minutes as well.
I'll grant that.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
I could see her on the screen, so
Okay.
she is
Can you
present.
see? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So to begin, Madam Chair, Board Members, Todd Pressman, 202nd Avenue South, St. Petersburg. This is HCCPA 2203. We did have a mixed vote from the Planning Commission Board. It was a 4-3 vote in regard to this request. We're at the extreme county line, as Jillian noted. 7.99 acres. We have a companion PD seeking 256 units. We are proposing and have reconfigured the project to allow up to 10 units as affordable, as needed or requested by the public, and as allowable by the county. You've seen the two parcels together. You'll note that we have commercial center next door, and there's commercial throughout the area and residential. These are examples of the proposed project of what it would look like. Most importantly are the entitlements on the site. Currently, the board approved in 2018 multifamily at 35 units per acre. What we're seeking is 35 units per acre on both parcels. The current entitlement and zoning use is 179 hotel rooms and commercial office at 35,000 square feet, and those are both PD site plans. So I would suggest that what we're proposing today is reflective of what's already approved at the site. There's substantial residential in the area, or as you can see here next to the site. This is just some of the aerial views of the residential. In regard to the coastal high hazard, which is a critical issue, we have checked with Pinellas. They have significant capacity, and we spoke with Ken Miller, who is the Mass Care Emergency Management Officer for the county, who told us that there is large capacity for sheltering for this site. This is the result of the state mandated planning from 1992, which has been successful in mitigating issues of coastal high hazard with the required elevations of structures and building out of shelters to provide capacity. There are several existing and newly proposed housing policies in the comp plan that support this. The first is the transportation element. And this is critical, commissioners, because it tells you there should be incentives for higher land use densities and intensities along transit emphasis corridors, which this site is. And under your new housing rewrite, there are a number of policies. Plan for future growth near access to bus emphasis corridors, which this is. Direct growth along multimodal transportation network, and promote residential infill within urban service areas. Route 812 by PSTA runs along Hillsborough Avenue, and this is a very intensive transportation route for the public because they provide pickup and drop off at will call at any time for people who don't have to wait at bus stops or if it's raining. It ties into the Northwest Transfer Center, and PSTA also allows for reduced costs for Uber, Lyft, and taxis. It ties into Route 34, which is a major HART route. This is the Route 812 that runs between Hillsborough and Pinellas. Proposed in the future by HART is their own route along 580. You can see the comments that they received from the public that they would love this service. From Route 34, which would go along 580, they look at doubling the frequency and extending to Oldsmar, and Route 34 is their second rider frequency of all in their study, the most productive revenue per mile. So there are plans to make this even a more intensive public transportation route. They will also be adding new paratransit to this entire roadway as well. Hillsborough Avenue is one of the three major connectors between the two counties. It takes 58,000 vehicles per day and is also part of your truck route. So it is a major arterial roadway and carries significant and unique public transport. Look at your transportation element. It recognizes that for Hillsborough Avenue, tying into the Northwest Transit Center, which ties in now both Route 34 into the future and currently by Route 812 on the PSTA route. Further, the future regional commuter line will run directly behind the site and will have a transit center directly on the county line, which is just a stone's throw from the site. So this is a unique, intensive, one-of-a-kind transit scenario with the intensive entitlements plus large shelter capacity, makes this a unique, interesting site. The Northwest Community Plan clearly promotes creation of a mixed-use neighborhood, vitality, mobility, and connectivity. That's shown directly on the Northwest Community Plan, very similar to what we're proposing, as you can see in that plan. This is a little closer up for you to see. It is a live, work, play site. Directly next door is a large Publix and Lowe's shopping center. Across the street is the same with residential. So although the future land use map makes it look very industrial, the area has been changing rapidly into much more live, work, play. These are just some of the shopping and restaurant and personal facilities that are available. That's what the Planning Commission wants: reduce red tape, make it easier to have walking between home, shopping, work, and school. That's what the Northwest Area Community Planning wants. They want walking distance for activities and allowing for home occupation, convenient transit. The entire area meets that need. There is a large corporate employment center, a smaller corporate center that includes Nielsen, United Healthcare, includes Tampa Bay Downs, includes downtown Oldsmar, which is a recreation and restaurant area, and the flea market, which is a big draw. So this is a very walkable employment and community site. And again, that's what the Northwest Plan Vision wants, and wants to add residential. And one or two of the members on your planning commission recognize that, who lived out in the area and recognized this connection. Commissioners, we had zero opposition, no calls, no letters or emails in opposition to this request. So in summary, we have extensive existing entitlements on the site, which I think are partially and mostly reflective of what we're proposing.
Mr. Pressman, I'm sorry, your time has expired for the 6 minutes you were allowed.
I appreciate, I got a lot, and I appreciate your patience.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, and we set aside 3 minutes per speaker, but I don't know that I have. I think there's an Adam that's signed up to speak on this item.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. My name is Adam Teets. I am with Johnson Development Associates, the applicant for this request, based locally here in Tampa, and I'm responsible for all of our real estate activities pertaining to multifamily development throughout the state for our company. We're a family-owned and operated multifamily industrial self-storage and hotel developer. And when we build our projects, we're not a merchant builder who builds and sells. We build to hold our projects and keep up and maintain them. You know what? I've got a PowerPoint here that I did not pull up. Excuse me. Let's see. Share. All right, here we go.
We're holding the timer for you so you can get it up.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, you may proceed.
Are you able to see that now?
Yes, we can see it. There you
Okay.
go.
Give me one more second. I got to click a button here. There we go.
Uh-oh. No. Yep, it's back.
Oh,
Okay.
Now we're at
It's there.
Okay, here we go. So I'm sorry about that. Have this prepared. As you know, it's been outlined already. Here's the site outlined in red, adjacent to the Publix and Lowe's shopping center. The previous presenters have done a fine job describing the site. I just wanted to give you a little bit further background on the site. As you see today, here it's fully, for the most part, undeveloped, except for the exception of a 7,000 square foot metal building, which is clearly dilapidated. Wall panels falling off, doors open, and vegetation coming up through the walls and foundation. inside, just junk stored up to the ceilings, showing signs of that there are squatters inside. And then also on the site, there is signs of active squatters and the remnants of them on the site as well. We are proposing a $70+ million investment in the community that will have significant impact on the immediate vicinity and a very direct and positive impact on both local establishment and large retailers. And this is being designed to be, as Todd alluded to, a dense urban infill walkable project. Here's some design inspiration that we have with it being close to the Tampa Bay, Upper Bay Preserve, outdoorsy. And then again, if we were looking for more urban infill, something along these lines. We have experience developing adjacent to shopping centers. This is one of our projects that we've done down in Miami. Here's another one that we've recently done up in Wesley Chapel, where we partnered with Hillsborough County, where they have the Northern Hillsborough Performing Arts Center and the site adjacent next door. I think I know the coastal hazard is an issue, is a big component to this, and so as a way to mitigate some of the items and to alleviate that, when our residents move in, we will have a move-in packet solely dedicated to hurricane preparedness, which will contain information on making our residents aware of their evacuation zone, the nearest storm shelters, and the importance of having an evacuation plan in place. In addition, we'll have mandatory meetings for all residents at the beginning of each storm season.
Your time has expired, sir.
Can I have maybe one more minute? I'm about ready to wrap up here.
Well, unfortunately, your time has expired, sir.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your presentation. That was helpful. With that, if the applicant, well, this is a public hearing, and we don't have any other persons signed up for public speaking. So with that, we'll offer the applicant an opportunity to rebut any issues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What Adam was wrapping up is that we looked at some elements to address mitigation. One item would include providing transportation to residents if there is a storm issue. And I think that they came up with some really good, important items that as we all work through mitigation of these kind of issues, these are very positive steps and can help support that issue. But I will say that I think when Ms. Massey presented the site, when you saw the mapping, the future land use categories are deceiving the sense as to what's really occurring out in the area, particularly with what's been approved at this site and in the immediate area in the Oldsmar area. When you add all this together, the existing entitlements, the unique and intensive public transportation element now, and that will be improved, along with what the Northwest Community Plan wants and with the mitigation we're proposing, it really is a unique and singular approach to the issues. I would say if you're on the fence on this issue, those elements are all coming together very critically without any opposition and with support from a number of the Planning Commission members. And in that respect, I think that this becomes a very positive site, and it does include clearly quite a number of comp plan elements and directives that are in the comp plan now and that are being written up under the new housing chapter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at the point with board discussion. You have any discussion from the board?
Move for approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Myers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner White. I see the Commissioner Smith. You have a comment? Or Commissioner?
Yes,
You're,
thank
you're
you.
recognized. My apologies.
Thank you. And at the workshop and in my briefings, I expressed concerns about the vulnerability of this site in the coastal high hazard area. And I asked about emergency management, hazard mitigation comments, and they weren't in the file yet when we had our workshop, but they're in the file now. And, I've been concerned, as a concerned citizen, before I was a commissioner, for many years about increasing density in the coastal high hazard area. I've come here and talked about it to planning commission staff, and I have never seen comments as strong as we have in this case file now from hazard mitigation. I mean, it's like very surprising to me, having come to this kind of issue, whether it's zoning or comprehensive plan, and asking myself, what about is in the coastal hazard? We have these policies. What about? And I've never ever seen this strong of a statement from hazard mitigation, from pages 44 to 46, but it really in the conclusions. Once the conclusions start, this is 46. At the bottom of 45 of your packet, this map amendment has been found to be high risk based on the potential of the density it's talking about. Oh, it does not assist with advancing the goals and objectives of the county's local management plan, but it gets much stronger. Based on our review, the potential negative impacts of the proposed future land use amendment surpasses any positive outcomes and would be adding unnecessary life safety hazards to an already high-risk hazard zone. Placing additional homes in a high-risk location. They say, this is our hazard mitigation staff. The goal of hazard mitigation is to reduce the pre-existing hazards while preventing the creation of new ones, and this amendment will be contradicting that based on the location alone. The proposed amendment would add a significant number of homes that will have a high risk of flooding, and the influx of people evacuating will lead to a strain on the egress transportation and require extensive reevaluation of all shelter needs for this area, potentially requiring new shelters built to accommodate the capacities needed. The general increased vulnerability to storm events and disaster response for this area poses a threat to life safety. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. Melissa's nodding her head because she's never seen anything like that either. This location is primed for severe disaster impacts, and with a potential increase of 159 residential homes, residents would be placed in a vulnerable location. Therefore, any increase will have a direct and negative impact on the safety and welfare of Hillsborough County citizens. I mean, I just don't see how I can possibly approve something over these objections of our hazard mitigation staff. If I were to do that, I would think, well, let's just take up a new comprehensive plan amendment in the next cycle and say we're going to not consider coastal high hazard area anymore. And we're not going to consider hazard mitigation, because if we're going to increase density here over these objections, then I don't see how we ever make that case anywhere that we're concerned about coastal high hazard area and hazard mitigation. And let me say, coastal high hazard is about more than just evacuation and safety, although that's a lot. It's also about mitigating the insurance claims which affect insurance rates across the county and the region. Our having the system that we have of protecting people's property from flooding helps us have our county citizens have a higher insurance rating across the board for all our insurance. So in my time, I've brought carloads of people from Sun City Center objecting to this kind of thing in the coastal high hazard area because they're concerned about in general, the insurance claims in the area generally. The Planning Commission staff also notes the compatibility issues. I know the applicant has gone to great lengths to talk about the transit available here, but that's not hard. There's a PSTA express route that goes by there. That's a weak argument to me, although they've done as best they could in making it. But for me, I mean, I just cannot, in good conscience, given the increasing storm and flood and the risk to our citizens in the terms presented by hazard mitigation, a direct and negative impact on the safety and welfare of Hillsborough County citizens, I'm going to make a substitute motion to deny.
Second.
We have a substitute motion to deny by Commissioner Smith and a second by Commissioner Kemp. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I was trying to hit my button sooner and I didn't quite get it and was taking it off because I would have liked to have said the thing sooner. I think it was, what was made was a compelling presentation for something that I think would be incredibly, I mean, I just can't, it just would, I understand why it made it look like it was okay to do this, but it's really very, it would be, I think, a reckless move by us to approve this, and irresponsible. I'd like to put up the adopted future land use map again, and because I think that the way this was done was, I can understand why you might, if you didn't, weren't very familiar, might have been convinced by what was said, but really, I think there's real problems if we could put that map up, and instead of hearing the yeah, that. And we could probably, I always think sometimes we don't have the maps that show the big area well enough. And we don't have it this time exactly either. But I looked into this quite a bit because the CSX tracks go right through there. I happen to know that 12,000 people live there, but 40,000 people commute to that, I guess because of Nielsen is what I've heard being there. So it's a great commuter area. It's the only place where there's like an urban servant area connection that connects us to Pinellas County. That's the only reason that we have a regional UZA. It's this little teeny spot there that goes across there that connects us. But if you look at this, so all the gray areas surrounding this, all that is light industrial. That's where he says, they put up the Lowe's or the Publix, whatever. If you look to the south of that, that's office commercial. You look to the south of that, that's the light yellow res 4. And those are those places down there, which are right kind of on the water. I think they were done in a different generation when it was more acceptable to do that and to build in the high hazard area. I don't think that those neighborhoods down there would ever be there today, and should not. But that's what we're dealing with. So they're there, and they're like. I mean, they're in the middle of practical marshland down there. It's a really risky place to build. I think I said before I've seen flood maps of this area, storm maps of this area, where this is instantly the area. I was shocked. I really did not understand this. That goes like 10 feet underwater at a heartbeat. So I think it's really wise that this gray area was made light industrial. that you have office commercial, because those are uses that you could move up a floor or a floor or two for parking. And, nobody has to live there and have to evacuate during a storm. They just don't go to work. But also, as water rises and as we run into all kinds of issues there, this is not the place to put in this heavy development. Also, it was mentioned that right now it's a hotel there. The regional mixed use would allow for a hotel there. Fine. That's, it doesn't have to be occupied if there's not dangerous situations. And it doesn't have to be a place where a person lives and invests and gets into the insurance trouble and gets into the issues. A hotel is a fine use for that. Light industrial is a fine use. Publix is a fine use. These restaurants, they're all fine uses for this. And that's what should be there, not putting a bunch of people at risk and not starting to develop this and break it open in a way which, as you know, I'm a huge promoter of heavy or of density, and this is in an area where the CSX tracks go through. And let me just speak for a second about transit. Hillsborough Avenue is Route 34. And for a lot of Hillsborough Avenue, it is one of the best routes, strongest routes for ridership. And we have more frequent we had more frequent times on there when the county commission was putting forward $2.5 million to do that, along with some other areas in the county. We had higher ridership before COVID with that. But the ridership that's heavy is not at that area. And I question even sometimes whether we should go up in that area, because you extend bus services. It takes a whole lot of time that you lose, and you don't do that much service for those many people, because it's has light, people living there and using a service like that. If we saw a heat map, I think we could see why Route 34, not in that area, has high ridership, but we don't have that here. And as Commissioner Smith said, it was also pointed out the PSTA. That's probably to Nielsen, actually, some of that ridership. And, anything you say about regional service, we all know about that, how that is going to, they're saying they want our money to do it. And, I don't see where that's going to come when we have needs already locally that we can't even serve areas like this. So in terms of transit, I mean, that's it doesn't really work for that either. So I think it's just overall, it would be a really, we should not put people in this position. We should not break open this area. I think the uses that it's settled for now that are put in there have been done wisely now in this generation. The development that's there is the single family res 4 on the water. Those places, as time moves on, are going to be subjected to some very difficult times, and we shouldn't compound that by putting more out there. And I think one of the reasons we're not hearing a lot of pushback is because nobody's living in those areas to push back. So that's why there's not opposition in the immediate area. It's light industrial, and there are Lowe's or whatever. They're going, sure, we don't, put it in. But it wouldn't be wise for us to do.
Commissioner Cohen, you're recognized.
So I've been very torn on this, and torn because at first glance, putting apartments in the urban service area on Hillsborough Avenue, which is a major arterial road, seems to make a lot of sense. But not to reiterate what was just said, I could not get over the language that Commissioner Smith cited, and I think that Commissioner Kemp's analysis of why it's appropriate to put all of these other things there, but not necessarily add residential, really makes a whole lot of sense. I understand the need that we have for housing, and I am willing to bend in a lot of directions in order to try to make that happen. But I find the language here related to the level of risk from water, from flooding, to just simply be too high of a bar for me to get over. So I'm not going to be able to support it.
Commissioner Myers? Oh, you pulled it back. Okay. Okay. Well, we have a motion on the floor to deny by Commissioner Smith and a second by Commissioner Kemp. Please take a roll call vote.
Madam Chair, before we do the roll call.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you go back to the map that showed all of the development, the Lowe's, the Publix? Because I want to kind of understand why we have all of the businesses in the commercials, which is right adjacent to the development, but yet we allow the development of the commercial side, and we saying now the flooding for housing. Because you got a hotel right there. All this is, and we're talking about a walkable community. So I'm just trying to get the understanding, how do we approve all of this, like right in the same area, and then you get ready to put for housing, and we're saying it's in the flood zone, pretty much. So if staff can explain that, where I can have a better understanding, because we approved all the other, right there in the same walking distance, same area, and now we talk about housing, and we say we have the flooding. So I'm just trying to see how it connects, why you can do all the other things, but when you get ready to do housing, still in a walkable community, it's not acceptable. We brings out now the flooding.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. You know, there are goods and services in the area in the future land use categories that Commissioner Kemp pointed out, the office commercial 20, the light industrial, that's usually for, you know, more industrial uses and job growth. And those uses are really more appropriate for the coastal high hazard area, because when you get into the residential dwelling units, then you have to think about evacuation times, storm surge, you know, flooding, that type of thing. So our comprehensive plan is very clear on not increasing density in the coastal high hazard area for those reasons. And that was also reflected in the comments made by Hazard Mitigation, the Office of Emergency Management. I understand the disconnect between the two. If you have goods and services, you want the residential population to support those. But in the coastal high hazard area, the policy direction in the comprehensive plan is not to have residential growth in those areas.
Have the evacuation for all in that same area? Everyone would have to evacuate? In that area, you have the Publix, you have the Lowe's, so if a hurricane, you happen to have one, then what happens? Because the whole area is going to have to be evacuated, not just where we're talking about building affordable housing, but then you think about the commercial side.
Right.
So I'm just trying to see why the two just didn't connect and allow all of the development to occur in the beginning, which is there now.
Sure, I think the residential units assumes a permanence associated with it, because someone is living there and they would need to leave. That's a different scenario than someone just going to Publix and, you know, them providing a goods and services for a temporary amount of time. So that's really the distinction, having someone living there permanently and taking on that risk, which is quite high, versus someone, you know, just seeking goods and services or working a job, which, of course, if you're evacuating, you're not going to that job that day.
Thank you.
I actually haven't said anything, so I put my name in the queue. But, and I like I said, I've been enormously torn by this as well. Having that area be an area that could potentially be at risk of storm surge, largely because of where it sits on the bay. And the fact that it does have residential all the way around it already, did make it kind of difficult to understand why we weren't going to even consider a multi-family structure. And the issue that's brought up in the comments, as it talks about hazard mitigation, does address the fact that there would be more bodies that would need to leave. In this case, it would be a concentrated number of them, and they would be in a multi-story building that would require, our code would actually require that to be elevated. Like they couldn't build on the land at the level that it is now. It would have to be higher if my understanding correctly, in that particular area because of the risk zone, that it would be required to actually have, it would have it bermed up, right? Wouldn't it have to be higher than its current level if whether it's a hotel or an apartment complex?
Yes, the structure would need to be elevated above, at least 2 feet above the base flood elevation for the area. So regardless of the structure, it would be required to be on an elevated foundation.
So when we're talking about evacuation of a multi-family apartment rental property, if that's in fact what ends up there versus a hotel, in both cases, the building would be higher and they would be in a zone that would be the first line of evacuation on an evacuation route. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So it would be the first area to evacuate. And it would be in a multi-story building that would have an elevation level that would actually allow them to leave the building, but it would also be next to grocery stores and other things to help them supply themselves out at the door. So this is a really tough spot because it is on a major evacuation zone. Hillsborough Avenue is an evacuation route. It is the first available road to be able to get folks out of the area in an area that has residential that's more at risk than what this property, in my opinion, would actually experience. The issue is capacity on being able to get the folks out the door. And it's my understanding this is how many units? 276? 200 roughly? It's 256, somewhere in the range between 200 and 275, somewhere around there. And that's also depending on what they end up actually building, right? So that's like the maximum that they could build, correct? And yes, we do need housing. But I also recognize that if they are taking appropriate steps to help people be recognized, they are in a flood zone and there is access to a major evacuation center. It is a really tough position to support the denial at this point. It's easy to support the denial if all other factors, and we were talking about single family homes, as is what is kind of referred to in the description. The high hazard category talks about the increase in single family homes. This is not a single family home project. This is a multifamily project. It's a large building having to build to new codes that have the ability to withstand potentially, and this is what I need to understand. We're still trying to figure out our structural codes for being able to address not only water intrusion, but also winds. Would a multifamily story building be designed currently with our building code to withstand 140 mile an hour winds?
It would be required to meet that design standard, yes.
So we would be turning down a building that would be best suited to be able to deal with wind hazard in an area as opposed to a single family home. So that's part of the reason why it's very hard for me to deny this application, because while yes, it does put more bodies here, but we're going to have a lot of bodies from Pinellas coming through this area too. It is a major evacuation zone, and it would be the first to be notified to move. So they would be the first evacuation level in this location. So I'm really torn. Normally I would say, I don't want any more development in this area. But right now, given that it's open land, it's in terrible shape. It's adding nothing to the value of the community. It has a lot of jobs in there that are walkable to allow those individuals to be able to work and live in the same area. So I'm going to have a hard time supporting the denial at this point. With that, I'll recognize Commissioner Kemp.
Thank you. And I think you're taking the applicant's word for the walkability of this area, because this is an area that people drive to because they're not really living there. Like there's not a lot of people around there. So they drive from around there to go to the Publix or to go to work, or, the few houses that are there on the water that were developed. But you're putting in when you saw those other pictures, it didn't really look like a walkable area, right? It's probably one of the best uses is to have it actually not be very developed at all. And you can, something, like a grocery store, you can have a grocery store there and get your groceries and leave. But that area, Hillsborough Avenue in that area, will be filled with water very quickly, and it won't be even passable. So even though it is a hurricane evacuation route, it is very much in peril right at the bay there. But I'd also like to say any illusion about affordable housing is an illusion. First of all, it is not on transit. That is not very accurate about transit. There are many, many, many places in the urban service area to build multifamily housing that has better access to transit than this. But it is cheaper land to get because it's zone light industrial now. So that would be the attractor, but it should stay light industrial so that it doesn't put people and the long-term community at risk from a storm or flooding in terms of what that does. And 256 units, if you tried to build 256 single-family homes, you'd be in trouble. These are 256 residents and however many people they have that you're talking about in a single building that you're doing this to. But I'd like to also point out that I think the last time they said of the 256 units, I think the last time it was like, we'll make 6 affordable. And this time they said 10, but that was really very like if the people ask for it and if we do something or whatever. I mean, 10, it'd be another thing if you were looking at more than that. But as we've stated before, if you don't have good transit, it's not very affordable anyway. This is really not the place for this to be done taking this risk, putting people at this. There are many, 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 many places in the urban service area that are far more suited and appropriate for this kind of development and have better access to transit. So I would just say that this, again, and we have no guarantees here, frankly, of affordable housing. And if it is 10 of 256 units doesn't do much for you. So I just wouldn't bank on that. And I don't even know what the promise is here or whatever. I guess I didn't even look at it very well because I would really not want to put anybody in this situation to have their places maybe flooded or hurt or damaged, even if they were renters. I think it's just really doesn't speak to any of the needs that we have.
Commissioner Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I just want to kind of put context of my concerns of the danger to people that the hazard mitigation has put out here. When you see videos of the flooding damage and the people who were impacted in Louisiana lately or in South Florida at times before, they could have all evacuated, but it's just, that's kind of putting it on them to say, they could have evacuated, or we can just count on these people evacuating. Our hazard mitigation department, our emergency management staff has been looking at how we can best handle the coming hurricanes and storm events that Florida is very, very vulnerable to, particularly in the coastal high hazard area. And they've made these plans of how we should, and they've worked with our planning commission to work with our comprehensive plan to figure out how we can best develop things so we're more resilient, so we put less people in danger. And so, sure, we can have a movie house on the beach. We can have a restaurant on the beach, because in a hurricane, that restaurant can close. And their insurance will take the hit if they get flooded out, and they'll rebuild. But when you put people's homes and families in these places, it's a different thing. And our hazard mitigation people, our emergency preparedness experts have not said, well, as long as you build something high and strong, and put people on the upper floors, you could do that. They don't say in the coastal high hazard area, as long as you're putting multifamily or up on higher stories, they'd be safe, because they're not. They say, don't put residents there. Go ahead and put a restaurant there, but don't put residents there. They've looked at this. If it could be, as simple as saying, well, just put the parking on the ground floor and then put the housing on the next floor, and make sure that everybody gets notified in the time of a hurricane. Well, they would have said that, but that's not what they tell us in this very, very strong language. They tell us this increase in density here would have a direct and negative impact on the safety and welfare of Hillsborough County citizens. They tell us we'd be adding to the burden of evacuees, people leaving their residence, and they are telling us it's a huge safety issue. I agree. I want density in the urban area. And Commissioner Myers, you are absolutely right to ask the question about, we already have this commercial here, why shouldn't we be putting residential to create this more of a walkable area? That's a very sensible, way to look at this. But it has to come back to, it's just the wrong place because it's such a vulnerable location. And we have the advice of our experts telling us it's too risky. It is putting people in danger, and it's adding to the danger and the direct and negative impacts on the safety of the whole county, the more residents you put in these very, very vulnerable places that will have to be evacuating. And I'm sorry I can't get past that, but if I don't, I feel like we need to back up. We need to have the back of the emergency management people who are putting such a strong statement out here and say, yeah, we're listening to you. You can tell us this, and we're going to take you seriously, and we're going to act on this. If we don't do that, we're telling our emergency management people we're not listening to them. So that's my last bit.
Thank you. Commissioner Myers, you're recognized.
And this will be my last point. And I would like to kind of compare this to the Port Tampa area in the city of Tampa, because in the Port Tampa area in the city of Tampa, it's a flood area. Mm-hmm. And they're constantly building new houses in the flood area, but they're all elevated, okay? So which they still have to come out for the evacuation route and all of that. Is it possible, and I'm just asking the question, could the developer, the applicant I should say, look at if it could be elevated because it is in a coastal area, and then come back to us as to see if it's possible it could be done? I'm just raising the question.
So the structure will be, it'll be required to be elevated. So there's an established base flood elevation, which is a model of where floodwaters would rise. Any new structures are required to be at least that elevation plus 2 additional feet in height. So that is an inherent, that's the minimum requirement that we would require of the structure. Certainly that if the applicant were to seek to build higher than that, they they may have that latitude. But there is a elevation requirement, a minimum elevation requirement that we would impose today on the structure.
Then maybe we can ask the question if the applicant would be, I'm just trying to kind of find a way to make this work if possible.
Commissioner Myers, I can appreciate that. And if the applicant can answer that, just to get some clarification, and I did have an additional question because I hear that there's an opportunity for affordable housing here, and I wouldn't approve it for affordable housing anyway. It's in a flood area. It's part of the housing element that I have actually been trying to encourage the lack, that we don't build affordable housing in floodplain areas anyway. So I don't see that as being a plus. Normally, I would say, yeah, I want affordable housing everywhere. But I in this particular case, I wouldn't have a desire to have affordable housing in this location anyway because of the high hazard area and because of the impact of a family that may have limited resources to be able to adjust and address and have the resources to evacuate in a timely fashion. So I don't see that offer as a good thing. So I wanted to check with the applicant to address Commissioner Myers' question as well as the issue associated with affordable housing. Is that part of their commitment to this process, or was it a nice way of offering additional benefits that we tend to like to see?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Todd Pressman, for the record. In regard to the affordable housing, we recognize that there may be concerns about it. So the position of the applicant is that they have come to understand that affordable housing is a critical issue in the county, and they want to help address it. And that would depend upon conditions of whether the county would allow it at that area. If they would provide it. But their commitment is to provide up to 10 affordable, under standards, affordable housing at this location. They reconfigure the project to do that if allowable by the county. And of course, if there's residents or any residents or anyone that requests it. That's all that means. That isn't meant to be tepid or just a partial suggestion. I did ask the applicant in regard to raising the structure. I think Mr. Gormley did answer that question quite well, but the applicant is indicating that if they need to study that and look at that more closely, they will in terms of additional height of the structure.
Commissioner Myers, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, not seeing any further questions. No one else in the queue. Please ask the clerk to take a roll call vote, please.
I think to clarify, this is a motion to deny.
It's a motion to deny, yes.
Substitute motion to deny.
It's a substitute motion to deny application HC CPA 2203.
Overman?
No.
Cohen?
Yes.
Hagan?
No.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
No.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
No.
Motion failed 3-4. Commissioners Overman, Hagan, Myers, and White voted no.
So, where are we, folks?
The main motion, Madam Chair.
They're at the motion, and Commissioner Myers made the motion to approve, and Commissioner White, you were the second, correct? Okay, are there any other comments or concerns? With that, we'll take a roll call vote.
Overman?
Yes.
Cohen?
No.
Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
No.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
No.
White?
Yes.
Motion carried 4-3. Commissioners Cohen, Kemp, and Smith voted no.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
And we need to vote to consider an ordinance?
At this time, I'll just remind the board that majority plus one vote was required to prevail in order to pass this plan amendment.
Okay, so we don't have a majority plus one.
Correct.
Okay. So the motion failed.
Amendment.
Or the
does
amendment
not-
failed.
The amendment cannot proceed
Proceed.
with that.
Okay.
So there is no need at this time to take a vote on an
On the
ordinance.
ordinance at this point. So where are we then?
So the plan amendment has failed. It's not adopted, and it is essentially denied on the basis. It's a denied on the basis of
Not having the plus one.
failure to have a majority plus one of the board.
Okay, okay. All right. So, all right. Well, given that and not seeing any other motions necessary, or I would suggest that the meeting is adjourned.
Can
Excellent.
I ask just one questions we're here? I maybe could have asked
Is it related to the item? Should I?
It's related
I'll
to-
withdraw the adjournment then.
Just for a second, I just wondered about the fact that, like, we had a meeting last Thursday night, and we have another meeting tonight, like 1 week apart, and about consolidating these or that to one meeting a month of this. And I just wondered, about that. I wanted to bring it up here. I didn't want to prolong the meeting, but I do want to bring it up to ask about that.
Just add to your question. At City Council, they start plan amendments at 5 instead of at 6. And I agree with consolidating. And I also was wondering if maybe we could start an hour earlier. It might make it
I might be able to tuck
easier.
my grandson in at 8:30 if we actually do
Yeah,
start at 5.
so-
That would be nice. Okay, Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Yeah, so I'm to blame for these two in a row because I had requested last week's date to get the overlay district disposed of, but I agree with consolidation wherever possible, and I'm comfortable with the 5 o'clock start time. I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth in, but I will wholly accept the blame for the fact that this time we've had meetings 2 Thursdays in a row. My apologies.
And
So do we just need to ask for support from staff to consider the calendar as far as repeating them, each week? Because we also have several other things that are coming up as well with the comp plan amendments as far as the housing element, the bus emphasis corridor, and the TDR elements are all coming up very soon too.
I also don't think this is the first time it's happened, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's happened a few times in the past, and I just wanted to be aware because it is really hard, and especially I don't have that much of a burden getting in here as much as, right, exactly, other commissioners do, as well as I agree with the 5 o'clock start. I'd even go for 4, or whatever, just because there's a lot of events at night as well, and so anyway, I think that's good. I'd go for that. I'd even consider something else.
I'm listening.
And we will take the scheduling of the hearings and the consolidation. We'll certainly endeavor to do that going forward. You do have several hearings lined up already that do have some fair amount of substance to them. So we try to balance of how late the hearings go versus the number of them. But we'll take this direction and look for opportunities to consolidate. In terms of the start of the public hearing, 5 p.m. is the statutory minimum time for evening hearings. I believe there's a board policy that evening hearings would start at 6, but we can certainly come back and get some direction into either changing that policy or looking to waive that on a particular hearing basis.
Can you share with us what meetings we already have for evening meetings that have already been advertised, those dates, to see at what point can we start really looking at possible changes?
So we have 2 land development code hearings. Neither of those have been advertised yet.
It also plays into part when we're doing these comp plan amendments about when they get sent to Tallahassee for consideration. So I don't know if that plays a part in the decision as well.
August 11th. So August 11th would not be noticed yet, right? So August 11th is our next hearing. I don't believe that one has been noticed. That one will have a companion, have a comp plan amendment with a companion rezoning. I believe that we would have announced that time at the zoning hearing, master hearing for that rezoning. So I would suggest for August 11th, it's not been
Noticed,
legally
hasn't it?
noticed, but notification has been provided to the public of a 6 p.m. start for that August 11th hearing. And I think that's the only other one that would have any either notice or notification of the start time.
Well, it's several months from now. I'm thinking that if we can consolidate everything that comes in after that to that date, that's get us closer to what we're trying to accomplish here. August is going to be a very busy month for some folks.
Yeah.
So just saying. But yeah, if you could come back and take a look at the future dates and see what we haven't advertised and a way to possibly consolidate some of the agenda items that do need some timely approval, especially when it has to go up for review and then come back for our adoption. That would be very helpful. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other comments. So is it safe to adjourn, guys? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.